Marcus Thompson was a man who always dreamed big. From the moment he graduated college, he told himself that he would climb the ladder of success, no matter what it took. He worked hard, stayed late at the office, and rarely took breaks. To most people, Marcus seemed like the perfect example of determination. But behind closed doors, his life wasn't as picture-perfect as it appeared. Marcus had been married to Tasha for 10 years. In the beginning, their love was strong. They laughed together, dreamed together, and supported each other through thick and thin. Tasha was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile. She believed in Marcus when others doubted him and stood by his side even during tough times. But as the years went by, something started to change. Marcus became more focused on his career than on their relationship. He started coming home later and later, often too tired to talk or even sit down for dinner. The spark between them began to fade. Tasha tried everything she could to keep their marriage alive. She cooked Marcus's favorite meals, left sweet notes in his bag, and made plans for date nights. But nothing seemed to work. Marcus acted like a stranger in his own home, lost in his thoughts and consumed by stress. He blamed his job for his distance, but deep down, he knew it wasn't just about work. Something inside him felt restless, like he was meant for something bigger, something Tasha couldn't give him. Things came to a head one evening after yet another argument. Tasha had tears in her eyes as she confronted Marcus about how distant he'd become. "You're not the same person I married," she said softly, her voice trembling. Instead of comforting her, Marcus snapped back. "I'm doing this for us," he shouted. "Don't you get it? If I don't push myself now, we'll never have the life we deserve." But Tasha didn't look convinced. She shook her head and whispered, "This isn't living, Marcus. You're running yourself into the ground, and you're leaving me behind." The words stung, but Marcus refused to admit she was right. That night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he realized he couldn't keep going like this. His heart ached, but so did his mind. He felt trapped between two worlds, the life he wanted and the life he had. By morning, he had made up his mind. Without saying a word, Marcus packed a suitcase while Tasha slept. He scribbled a short note explaining that he needed space and left before she woke up. What Marcus didn't know was that Tasha had a secret that would change everything. Just days earlier, she had taken a pregnancy test and discovered she was going to have a baby. As Marcus drove away from their home, Tasha sat alone in the kitchen, holding the test in her hand and wondering how she would raise this child without him. Little did either of them know. Their lives were about to take unexpected turns that neither could have predicted. Life without Tasha felt strange at first, but Marcus quickly convinced himself it was for the best. For so long, he had been weighed down by responsibilities and expectations. At least, that's what he told himself. Now, with nothing tying him to his old life, he could finally focus on chasing his dreams. He moved to a bustling city across the country, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and opportunities seemed endless. At first, freedom tasted sweet. No more late-night arguments, no more feeling guilty about missing family dinners. It was just him and his ambition. Marcus threw himself into his work with even more intensity than before. He landed a high-paying job at a prestigious firm, rented a sleek apartment downtown, and started attending networking events where he met people who shared his drive. To the outside world, Marcus appeared successful, confident, and unstoppable. But inside, there was a hollow ache he couldn't quite shake. Nights were the hardest. When the city lights dimmed and the noise faded, loneliness crept in like an unwelcome guest. He tried filling the void with new hobbies, weekend trips, and even a few casual relationships, but none of it brought him true satisfaction. Then came the news that hit him like a punch to the gut. A mutual friend casually mentioned during a phone call that Tasha had given birth to a baby girl. She named her Amara, the friend said cheerfully. "Cute little thing." Marcus froze mid-sentence, his heart pounding in his chest. A daughter. He had a daughter. The words echoed in his mind, refusing to leave. He wanted to ask questions. How was Tasha doing? Was the baby healthy? Did she look like him? But pride stopped him. Instead, he forced a laugh and changed the subject, pretending the news didn't affect him. For weeks afterward, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Amara. He imagined what she might look like, whether she'd inherited his curly hair or Tasha's bright smile. He wondered if she cried often as a newborn or slept through the night. These thoughts haunted him, especially during quiet moments when he allowed himself to be honest about how much he missed Tasha. Yet despite the longing, Marcus convinced himself that staying away was the right choice. After all, he reasoned, he wasn't cut out for fatherhood. He barely had time to take care of himself, let alone a child. As months turned into years, communication between Marcus and Tasha dwindled until it stopped altogether. Mutual friends occasionally dropped tidbits about Tasha and Amara, how they were doing well, how Amara was growing up fast. But Marcus never reached out. He buried himself deeper into his career, climbing higher and higher until he became one of the top executives at his company. On paper, his life looked perfect. He had money, status, and independence. But deep down, he knew something, or someone, was missing. Sometimes, late at night, Marcus would scroll through social media, hoping to catch a glimpse of Tasha or Amara. Once, he saw a blurry photo of Tasha holding a toddler with pigtails. She looked happy, radiant even, despite the challenges of raising a child alone. Guilt gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, telling himself that Tasha didn't need him anymore. She was strong, capable, and clearly thriving without him. Still, the image of Amara stayed etched in his memory, a reminder of the family he had walked away from. Years passed, and Marcus grew accustomed to his solitary lifestyle. He dated here and there, but nothing serious ever stuck. Something always felt off, like a piece of him was missing. Friends teased him about being a bachelor for life, but Marcus shrugged it off with a laugh. What they didn't know was that every time he heard a child giggling in the park or saw a father playing with his kids, a pang of regret shot through him. He tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on his next promotion or business deal. But no matter how hard he worked, the emptiness lingered, whispering reminders of the choices he had made, and the ones he hadn't. Little did Marcus know, his story was far from over. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, and soon he would find himself face to face with a truth that would turn his world upside down. Years had passed since Marcus left Tasha and his old life behind. By now, he had built a comfortable routine in the city. He spent his days attending meetings, closing deals, and climbing the corporate ladder. His evenings were filled with networking events, gym sessions, or quiet nights alone in his apartment. Life was predictable, stable, and, if he was honest with himself, a little monotonous. But Marcus didn't mind. He told himself that success came with sacrifice, and he had learned to live without the things he once thought he needed, like family. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus decided to take a break from his usual schedule. A local nonprofit organization was hosting a community event at a nearby park, and one of his colleagues had invited him to attend. The group focused on supporting Black families and providing resources for underserved communities. Though Marcus wasn't particularly passionate about volunteering, he figured it wouldn't hurt to show up. After all, it might be good for his image, and who knows, maybe he'd meet someone interesting. The park buzzed with energy when Marcus arrived. Families gathered under colorful tents, children laughed as they played games, and volunteers handed out snacks and information packets. Marcus wandered through the crowd, nodding politely at people he recognized, but not engaging too deeply. He wasn't used to being around so many kids. They reminded him of Amara, though he tried not to think about her too much. As he strolled past a group of children playing tag, a burst of laughter caught his attention. It wasn't just any laugh. It was loud, infectious, and impossible to ignore. Curious, Marcus turned toward the sound and froze. There, standing in a circle, were 4 identical little faces staring back at him. Quadruplets, Their resemblance to him was uncanny. The same curly hair, the same dimpled smiles, even the same mischievous glint in their eyes. For a moment, Marcus felt like the ground beneath him had shifted. "What are you looking at?" one of the kids asked boldly, crossing their arms and tilting their head. Marcus blinked, unsure how to respond. Before he could say anything, another child chimed in. "Are you lost, mister?" "No," Marcus replied slowly, still trying to process what he was seeing. I just noticed you guys look familiar." "Familiar?" the third child echoed, scrunching up their nose. "Do we know you?" Marcus hesitated. He wanted to ask more questions but didn't want to scare them off. Instead, he pointed casually and said, "Maybe. Do you belong to someone here? Like a mom or dad?" The fourth child grinned and pointed across the park. "Yeah, that's our mommy over there." They waved enthusiastically toward a woman standing near a food stall. Marcus followed their gaze, and his breath caught in his throat. It was Tasha. She looked older, of course, but unmistakably the same. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she wore a bright yellow t-shirt with the nonprofit's logo. She was talking to another volunteer, completely unaware of the scene unfolding nearby. Marcus's heart raced as he glanced back at the quadruplets. Could it be possible? Were these his kids? The thought sent a jolt of panic and excitement coursing through him. He knelt down slightly to get closer to their level. "Hey," he said softly, "what are your names?" "I'm Maya," said the first child, pointing proudly at herself. "And this is Mia, Micah, and Malik." Each sibling introduced themselves in turn, their voices overlapping in cheerful chaos. Marcus nodded, trying to keep his composure. "Those are great names," he managed to say. "And your mom. She's amazing, huh?" The kids beamed at the mention of Tasha. "She's the best," one of them exclaimed. "She works super hard for us." Marcus swallowed hard, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He couldn't believe what he was hearing or seeing. These weren't just random kids who happened to look like him. This was real. Somehow, Tasha had raised 4 children who shared his features, his mannerisms, maybe even parts of his personality. And he hadn't been there for any of it. Before he could ask anything else, Tasha noticed the commotion and glanced over. When she saw Marcus kneeling beside her children, her expression shifted from surprise to confusion, and then to something harder to read. She excused herself from the conversation and walked toward them, her steps slow but deliberate. Marcus stood up, his pulse pounding in his ears. He knew this moment would change everything, but he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Neither of them spoke right away. The quadruplets looked between their mother and this strange man, sensing the tension in the air. Finally, Tasha broke the silence. "Marcus," she said evenly, her voice tinged with disbelief, "what are you doing here?" It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of years of unanswered questions and unresolved emotions. Marcus opened his mouth. The air felt heavy as Marcus stood there, staring at Tasha. Her eyes searched his face, trying to understand why he was here after all these years. The quadruplets looked up at both of them, their cheerful energy fading into curiosity. "Mommy, do you know him?" one of them asked innocently, breaking the tense silence. Tasha hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, sweetie," she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "This is an old friend." She glanced at Marcus again, her expression unreadable. He could see the years etched on her face, not just age, but resilience and strength. She had changed, grown tougher, more confident, and yet, beneath it all, he recognized the same woman he had once loved. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he couldn't avoid the truth any longer. "Tasha," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "can we talk? Just for a minute." She studied him carefully, then nodded. "Kids, go play with your cousins over there," she instructed gently, pointing toward a group of children nearby. The quadruplets hesitated, clearly intrigued by this unexpected reunion, but obeyed without protest. Once they were out of earshot, Tasha turned back to Marcus, crossing her arms tightly across her chest. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" she asked again, her tone sharper this time. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling like a teenager caught in the act of something wrong. "I didn't know they existed," he blurted out, gesturing toward the kids. "I swear, if I'd known." "Known what?" Tasha interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "That you have 4 children. That I was pregnant with quadruplets when you walked out on me. Did you think I owed you an explanation after everything?" Her words hit him like a slap, forcing him to confront the reality of his actions, or lack thereof. Marcus opened his mouth to defend himself but quickly realized there was no defense. "You're right," he admitted quietly, lowering his gaze. "I left. I messed up, but I didn't know about the babies. If I had—" Tasha let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, please, you really expect me to believe that? You couldn't even stick around long enough to find out you were going to be a father. How convenient for you." Marcus flinched at her accusation, guilt twisting in his stomach. "It's true," he insisted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I left because I thought I wasn't good enough. For you, for our life together. I convinced myself you'd be better off without me. But I never imagined." His voice trailed off as he glanced toward the quadruplets, who were now laughing and chasing each other around the park. "I never imagined there would be 4 of them." For a moment, Tasha didn't respond. She simply stared at him, her jaw clenched as she processed his words. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging under the weight of years of bottled-up emotions. "You're right about one thing," she said slowly. "I was better off without you. Do you have any idea how hard it was raising 4 kids on my own? No father, no support system worth mentioning, nothing but bills piling up and sleepless nights. I can't imagine." Marcus replied honestly, his heart aching as he listened to her pain. "But I want to. I need to. Please, Tasha, tell me everything." She hesitated, debating whether to trust him even this much, but something in his eyes, regret, maybe even sincerity, made her decide to give him a chance. "Fine," she said finally, her voice softening. "When I found out I was carrying quadruplets, I was terrified. I didn't know how I'd manage, especially not alone. But I didn't tell you because, well, part of me knew you wouldn't come back. And I couldn't rely on someone who had already abandoned me once." Her honesty stung, but Marcus knew she was right. He had abandoned her, not just physically, but emotionally. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'm so sorry, Tasha. For leaving, for not being there, for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make things right. These kids, they're mine too, aren't they?" Tasha nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yes, Marcus. They're yours. And they've been waiting for a father figure their whole lives, even if they don't realize it. But showing up now doesn't erase the past. You have a lot to prove if you want to be part of their lives." Marcus nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of her words. "I know," he said firmly, "and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for raising them, for giving them everything I couldn't." Tasha looked at him for a long moment, searching for signs of the man she used to love, and perhaps glimpsing the man he could become. "We'll see," she said simply, turning her attention back to the quadruplets. One step at a time. As they stood there watching the children play, Marcus felt a flicker of hope, a fragile. The days following that unexpected encounter at the park were a whirlwind of emotions for Marcus. He couldn't stop thinking about Tasha and the quadruplets. Mia, Micah, and Malik. Their faces lingered in his mind, their laughter echoing in his ears even when he was alone. For years, he had convinced himself that leaving was the right decision, that he wasn't meant to be tied down by family or responsibility. But now, faced with the reality of what he had missed, he felt like he'd been living a lie. Marcus knew he had a lot to make up for. The guilt gnawed at him constantly, reminding him of every birthday, holiday, and milestone he hadn't been there for. How could he ever explain to 4 children that he hadn't known they existed? That their own father had walked away without a second thought. It wasn't going to be easy, but Marcus was determined to try. This time, he wouldn't run from his responsibilities. He started small, reaching out to Tasha through text messages. At first, she was hesitant, responding only briefly and keeping her tone neutral. But Marcus persisted, asking questions about the kids' favorite foods, hobbies, and school activities. Slowly, Tasha began opening up, sharing little details about their lives. She told him how Maya loved drawing, Mia adored music, Micah was obsessed with soccer, and Malik had a knack for telling jokes that made everyone laugh. Each tidbit gave Marcus a glimpse into the world he had missed, fueling his determination to be part of it now. After weeks of cautious communication, Tasha agreed to let Marcus visit the kids under one condition: no grand gestures or promises he couldn't keep. "They've been through enough," she warned him during a phone call. "If you're serious about being in their lives, you need to prove it, not just to me, but to them." Marcus promised he would, and true to his word, he showed up at their next meeting with a simple plan. He brought along a few gifts: coloring books for Maya, a beginner's keyboard for Mia, a soccer ball for Micah, and a joke book for Malik. When the kids saw him standing awkwardly on their doorstep holding the presents, they looked at him with wide eyes, unsure what to make of this stranger claiming to be their dad. "Hi guys," Marcus said nervously, crouching down to their level. "I got you something. I hope you like it." The quadruplets exchanged glances before cautiously accepting the gifts. "Are you really our daddy?" Malik asked bluntly, flipping through the pages of the joke book. Marcus swallowed hard, nodding. "Yeah, buddy, I am. And I'm sorry I haven't been around before now. But I want to get to know all of you, if that's okay with you." The kids didn't respond right away, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Tasha stood nearby, watching silently as the scene unfolded. Finally, Maya spoke up. "Do you know how to draw?" she asked, holding up the coloring book. Marcus chuckled softly. "Not very well, but maybe you can teach me." That seemed to break the ice. Over the next hour, the kids warmed up to him bit by bit, showing off their talents and asking him questions about his life. They quizzed him about his job, his apartment, and whether he liked pizza. He did. By the end of the visit, they were laughing together, though Marcus could still sense their hesitation. Trust wasn't something that could be earned overnight, and he understood that. As he left that day, Marcus felt a strange mixture of joy and sadness. Joy because he had finally met his children, and sadness because he realized just how much time he had lost. He promised himself he wouldn't waste another moment. From then on, he visited regularly, always bringing something new to share: a board game, art supplies, snacks for movie nights. Slowly but surely, the quadruplets began to see him not just as a stranger, but as someone who genuinely cared about them. Meanwhile, Marcus worked to repair his relationship with Tasha. He apologized repeatedly for the pain he had caused, acknowledging the sacrifices she had made while raising their children alone. Though she remained guarded, Tasha appreciated his efforts and allowed him to take on more responsibility. Together, they navigated co-parenting, setting boundaries, and working as a team for the sake of their kids. Through it all, Marcus learned valuable lessons about love, patience, and accountability. He realized that success wasn't measured by promotions or paychecks, but by the connections we nurture and the people we choose to stand beside. As he spent more time with his children, he discovered parts of himself he thought he had lost: the ability to laugh freely, to dream again, and to find meaning in the simplest moments. Little by little, Marcus began to rebuild the life he had once abandoned. It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead was still long, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. As weeks turned into months, Marcus's visits became a regular part of the quadruplets' lives. At first, he was careful not to overstep or intrude, knowing that trust had to be earned slowly. But with each visit, the bond between him and his children grew stronger. Maya would proudly show him her latest drawings, asking for his opinion on colors and shading. Mia practiced simple tunes on her keyboard, while Marcus clapped along, even though he didn't always keep up with the rhythm. Micah taught him soccer tricks in the backyard, laughing every time Marcus tripped over the ball. And Malik? Well, Malik made it his mission to make Marcus laugh until his sides hurt with endless knock-knock jokes. Through these small moments, Marcus began to understand who his children were, not just as individuals, but as a team. The quadruplets shared an unbreakable connection, finishing each other's sentences and working together like a well-oiled machine. They balanced one another perfectly. Maya's creativity softened Micah's competitive edge, while Mia's calm demeanor tempered Malik's boundless energy. Watching them interact filled Marcus with awe and regret. How could he have missed so much of their lives? Tasha noticed the change in Marcus too. He wasn't the same man who had walked out all those years ago. This version of Marcus showed up on time, kept his promises, and genuinely seemed invested in their family. She still carried scars from the past, but she couldn't deny the positive impact he was having on the kids. Slowly, cautiously, she began letting her guard down around him. Conversations that once revolved solely around logistics, school schedules, doctor appointments, extracurricular activities, started to include lighter topics, funny things the kids had done, memories from her childhood, and even updates about her own life. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Tasha invited Marcus to sit with her on the porch. It was a chilly night, and she wrapped herself in a blanket as they talked under the glow of string lights. "You've been doing good," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "The kids are starting to see you differently." Marcus nodded, staring at his hands. "I hope so. I want them to know I'm here now. For real." "They do," Tasha replied. "But it's not just about being present, Marcus. It's about showing them you're committed, for the long haul, no matter what." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Commitment wasn't something Marcus had ever truly embraced before, but now it felt like the most important thing in the world. "I'll never leave again," he promised, looking her in the eye. "Not them, not you, not this family." Tasha didn't respond immediately, but there was a flicker of something in her expression. Hope, maybe, or tentative belief. She changed the subject then, asking about his work and sharing stories about how the community nonprofit had helped her during tough times. As they talked, Marcus realized how much strength Tasha had shown throughout the years. She had built a life for herself and the kids despite the odds, leaning on her faith, her family, and her determination. Her resilience inspired him to become better, not just for the kids, but for himself. Over time, Marcus found ways to contribute more actively to their lives. He started volunteering regularly with the nonprofit that had brought them back together, using his resources and connections to support families in need. He organized fundraisers, mentored young fathers struggling to find their footing, and advocated for policies that uplifted underserved communities. Through these efforts, he discovered a sense of purpose he'd never known before. Helping others gave him perspective, reminding him of the privileges he often took for granted and the importance of giving back. Meanwhile, the quadruplets continued to teach him lessons he hadn't expected. From Maya, he learned the value of patience and creativity. From Mia, he gained an appreciation for music and its ability to heal. Micah showed him the importance of teamwork and perseverance, while Malik reminded him to find joy in the little things, even a silly joke. Together, they were reshaping his understanding of what it meant to live a meaningful life. By the end of the year, Marcus knew he had come a long way, but he also understood that the journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, moments when doubt crept in or old habits threatened to resurface. But for the first time, Marcus felt equipped to face them head-on. With Tasha by his side, in a new kind of partnership, and 4 incredible kids cheering him on, He was ready to embrace whatever came next. For Marcus, redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth fighting for. And as he looked at his growing family, he knew he was exactly where he belonged. As the months rolled by, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much his life had transformed. The man he used to be, the one who chased success at any cost, who ran from responsibility and buried his guilt, felt like a stranger now. He wasn't perfect. There were still moments when self-doubt crept in or when old habits threatened to resurface. But every time he looked into the eyes of his children, he remembered why he was fighting so hard to be better. Through his growing involvement with the quadruplets, Marcus learned lessons that went far beyond parenting. He realized how interconnected their struggles were with those of countless other families in similar situations. Tasha had once told him about the challenges she faced raising 4 kids alone, juggling bills, finding affordable childcare, and dealing with judgment from people who didn't understand her reality. Those conversations stayed with him, planting seeds of empathy and awareness that eventually blossomed into action. Marcus threw himself into volunteering with the nonprofit organization, determined to make a difference not just for his own family, but for others too. He organized workshops for single parents, sharing practical advice on budgeting, time management, and coping with stress. Though he initially felt out of place leading these sessions, he wasn't an expert after all. The participants appreciated his honesty and vulnerability. "You've been where we are," one mother told him after a workshop. "That makes you relatable." Real. Inspired by this feedback, Marcus took things a step further. He began advocating for systemic changes that would benefit underserved communities, including better access to healthcare, education, and job opportunities. His corporate background gave him a unique platform, and he used it wisely, speaking at conferences and partnering with local leaders to push for policies that prioritized equity and justice. In doing so, he aligned himself with the values of movements like Black Lives Matter, recognizing the importance of addressing racial disparities and uplifting marginalized voices. But perhaps the most profound lesson Marcus learned came from watching Tasha. Despite everything she had endured, his abandonment, financial hardships, societal pressures, she never lost sight of her strength or dignity. She taught him that resilience wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, even in the face of adversity. Her unwavering commitment to their children inspired him to become not just a provider, but a role model, a man who stood up for what was right and never backed down. The quadruplets, too, played a crucial role in shaping Marcus's growth. They reminded him daily of the beauty in simplicity, laughter over dinner, bedtime stories filled with imagination, weekend outings to the park. These seemingly ordinary moments became extraordinary because they were shared. Maya's drawings started featuring portraits of their new family, while Mia composed songs about love and togetherness. Micah scored his first goal during a soccer game, running straight to Marcus afterward for a high five. And Malik declared one evening, "Dad, your jokes are almost as funny as mine now." Each milestone brought Marcus closer to his kids and to himself. He no longer saw success as something external, tied to promotions or paychecks. Instead, he measured it by the smiles on his children's faces, the trust in Tasha's eyes, and the knowledge that he was making amends for past mistakes. Yet Marcus knew redemption wasn't a destination. It was a journey. There were still days when guilt lingered, reminding him of the years he'd missed. But instead of letting it weigh him down, he channeled it into fuel for change. He worked tirelessly to ensure that his presence in his children's lives wasn't just about showing up. It was about staying present through thick and thin. By embracing his role as both a father and an advocate, Marcus discovered a deeper sense of purpose. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to truly belong to a family, to a community, to something greater than himself. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its bumps, Marcus walked it with confidence, knowing he was finally living a life worth celebrating. This part highlights Marcus's personal growth, his efforts to contribute meaningfully to society, and the profound impact his family has had on reshaping his priorities. It sets the stage for the final chapter of reconciliation and fulfillment. Years had passed since Marcus first re-entered the lives of Tasha and the quadruplets. What began as tentative visits and awkward introductions had grown into something far deeper, a bond that felt unbreakable. The journey hadn't been easy. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and even doubts about whether Marcus could truly make up for lost time. But through patience, persistence, and love, they had built a new kind of family, one rooted in forgiveness, trust, and shared purpose. One sunny afternoon, Marcus stood proudly beside Tasha at the quadruplets' high school graduation. It was hard to believe that the tiny toddlers he'd once met in the park were now young adults, ready to step into the world on their own terms. Maya wore her cap slightly tilted, a nod to her artistic flair, while Mia clutched her diploma with quiet pride. Micah grinned broadly, already planning his future soccer career, and Malik cracked jokes with classmates, keeping everyone laughing until the very last moment. As the ceremony concluded, the quadruplets ran toward Marcus and Tasha, their faces glowing with excitement. "We did it," Maya exclaimed, throwing her arms around Marcus. He hugged her tightly, blinking back tears. One by one, the kids took turns embracing him, each hug feeling like proof that he had finally earned his place in their lives. Tasha watched the scene unfold with a soft smile, her eyes glistening. She leaned closer to Marcus and whispered, "You've come a long way, you know." Marcus nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "So have you. None of this would have been possible without you." Though they weren't married anymore, their relationship had evolved into something stronger than either of them had anticipated, a partnership built on mutual respect and gratitude. They may not have chosen this path initially, but together they had navigated its twists and turns, emerging stronger than ever. Later that evening, the family gathered at home for a celebratory dinner. The table was filled with laughter, stories, and dreams for the future. Maya talked about her plans to attend art school, while Mia expressed her desire to study music therapy. Micah announced he'd been recruited to play soccer for a college team, and Malik joked about becoming a stand-up comedian, though no one doubted he might actually do it. As the night wound down, Marcus raised a glass. "To my amazing kids," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "You've taught me more than I ever thought possible. And to Tasha, for being the strongest, most incredible person I know. Thank you for letting me be part of your lives." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into applause. Tasha smiled warmly, raising her own glass. "To us," she added. "We've been through so much, but look where we are now, together." The quadruplets cheered, their laughter filling the air. For Marcus, the moment felt surreal. This wasn't the life he had envisioned years ago when he walked out on Tasha. Back then, he thought success meant climbing ladders and chasing personal achievements. Now he understood that true fulfillment came from connection, from showing up, staying present, and building something meaningful. In the years that followed, Marcus continued to grow, not just as a father, but as a member of his community. His work with the nonprofit organization flourished, inspiring others to embrace second chances and advocate for change. Through it all, he remained grounded by the love of his children and the support of Tasha, who reminded him daily of the importance of humility and resilience. Looking back, Marcus realized how much he had gained by losing himself and then finding his way again. He had walked away from Tasha and their unborn child believing he wasn't cut out for family life. Yet fate, or maybe just life's unpredictability, had brought him full circle, giving him 4 beautiful reasons to become the man he always should have been. As he sat on the porch later that night, watching the stars twinkle above, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He wasn't the same person he used to be, and that was okay. Life hadn't turned out the way he planned, but it was richer, fuller, and infinitely more rewarding. For the first time in years, Marcus felt whole, and as the sound of his children's laughter drifted through the open window, he knew he was exactly where he belonged.